people.
This is like, it really is. It really is like pre-show.
ATP style.
Exactly. People, the Unwind Media channel is really for posterity because we don't do anything. I have no effort into SEO or anything like that. I just rename the episodes whatever we call them. That's all I do after the fact.
On Twitter, you mean? Or YouTube?
On YouTube.
Oh, YouTube, yeah. Right. That's fine. So this, I feel like Soylent Chef's Plate, that's more future chat.
I know.
We're not going to talk about that.
We don't have to talk about Soylent. Chef's Plate, I think, is interesting because it's not. It's like how we live and technology. It's in there.
I don't know. It's not on brand.
So, what's our brand?
Our brand is pensive, touchy-feely, not the future of eating. This is future eating.
I guess. If I have a story, it's not follow-up, but it's follow-up-y about my cell phone, and I told you that it is desktop fodder and not future chat fodder, what would you say?
I'd be fine with that.
Okay.
Did we talk about it on desktop before?
No. Well,
so that's not follow-up.
No, it's not. It's follow-up-y. It's in the vein of follow-up, but it's not following up on anything. No. It's like Neo follow-up.
We're not. This Neo thing is not happening. Stop trying to make Neo happen.
Yeah. So, is there anything on here? Like I was looking through the list of topics you had, and I'd be intrigued by a few of them. Do you have a favorite or one that you really think would be good for this week, this month?
Online reviews. Time and task management.
Mm-hmm. So you want to talk more about OneNote?
Next smartphone. Okay. No, I don't want to talk about OneNote. Next smartphone, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe we could save that discussion for an end of the year, kind of like that has more of a December vibe. The next year smartphone.
I agree. Or like beginning of next year,
right?
Like after the break, because then
there's no break.
One of us, there's a break.
There's literally.
I guess there's no break on a monthly show. One of us may have new tech to talk about next year.
Whoa, Mike's gonna get something new.
No, I'm not hinting towards anything. I'm just saying the possibility is always there.
Okay, well, I'm almost definitely not.
But then that means that you're set up to be uberly surprised.
That's true. Now you are hinting at something, and I don't think it's there. I like that.
Full disclosure, I'm not intentionally hinting at anything, but coincidentally may end up being the case.
You know, you said it earlier on Slack that you're becoming more Merlin Manny. Now this has fully become reconcilable differences because we're just talking about the topics at the lead-in of the show.
But that's fine. It's a natural progression.
It really is
to a discussion.
I have so much to say about unrealistic science and tech in the TV and movies. This topic you have, but I would feel better if I could prepare for it.
Sure.
The online review thing I think is interesting because there's a lot of different directions we could go with it. And if there's time, do time management. No, like
ironically enough.
Oh, me.
No, that's actually
always coming up with irony. Yeah, like do a first half, second half kind of thing.
What if we did the time management one first, so we could learn how to manage time to fit in that next topic?
I'd be fine with that as well. Before we get too far into the show, why don't we just have a little follow-up to talk about the new network that we joined?
Mm-hmm. This is very exciting for us.
Yeah, you need to lead this because you are the lead on this.
Am I? I guess I am the main host of the show.
Yeah, you're the main host and you're also the local host.
I am the local host. I am Alberta-based,
yes.
As many of you may or may not know. And there is a podcast network called Alberta Podcast Network, and they reached out to local podcasters in Alberta, Calgary specifically, and our show Desktop has been accepted as a member of the Alberta Podcast Network. So Karen Unland is the lead of the Alberta Podcast Network. She organizes it, liaises with sponsors and the various organizers for the shows on the network. And it's essentially a collaboration between the various podcasts in Alberta that all work together to raise awareness of the different type of shows that are out there that people in Alberta and across the world, for that matter, can find that are based in Alberta and have a bit of a local angle, local perspective, and hopefully kind of grow each other's audiences and hope to, I guess basically essentially what a network is for is to raise awareness of the different members of the network.
Yep.
So we're very excited to be a part of that, and would like just to thank Karen for accepting us as a part of the network, and we're very excited to work with everyone.
Yeah, as part of that, we have formally moved to a once a month format, and we're going to be held feet to our own feet to our own fire to keep that schedule. So
Yes.
Regular Desktop listeners will actually get more episodes, I think, on average compared to before.
I think so. It's at least the average may stay this. I guess probably is even more on average.
It'll definitely be more regular.
Yeah, because we're probably averaging maybe once a month ish.
Yeah,
slightly less, but now it will probably essentially be on average once a month. I see no reason for it not to be.
Yeah.
So you can look forward to a lot more regular content, and throughout this next year and going forward, we'll be hoping to kind of let everyone know of the different types of shows and options out there to see local Alberta content.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think of this, and pros and cons and pleasures, displeasures, and we'll engage in a bit of discussion there. But as of right now, we're very happy and very excited to be a part of it.
A part of what?
The Alberta Podcast Network. You can find them at www.albertapodcastnetwork.com for a full list of shows. And you can follow them on Twitter at abpodnet and give them a tweet, a shout out, and thank them for accepting us.
Yeah. And in case you haven't picked up on it, Mike, I'm training you on how to do these. So powered by who?
Powered by ATB.
Nice.
Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. So I would like to thank both Alberta Podcast Network and ATB for supporting local Alberta content and podcasts.
Yeah. That's it's very interesting going into these kinds of agreements because it becomes kind of second nature. But at the very beginning, I having done this before, had a few kind of formal sponsors for another podcast I do, Ottawa. You get into the thing where, I've entered into a contractual agreement to mention these people, these groups, and they're obviously like the sponsor that we had in the past was it was like a lunch delivery service, and so it's like it's something you actually do support, and we got to try out the service, and it was interesting, and like I have always been very supportive of podcast networks in general, and just kind of being able to cross promote and find new podcasts and people that are interested in what you're doing that are also local. And ATB, I've heard, is very forward thinking. I haven't heard much about ATB, but I'm looking forward in the next several months learning. But they're very on, like, I switched banks because of Apple Pay. Like when Apple Pay didn't launch on my bank, I switched. And ATB seems to be, from everything I'm hearing, they're kind of trying to lead the way in Alberta on getting new digital like banking services and products, and so I'm very eager to learn about them.
Yeah. No. Every time that I've considered switching banks, I've always looked at ATB as definitely a leading option, if not the leading option. If I was like more of like a small business with more transactions and kind of a bit more needs on the banking side, I probably would have done it sooner.
Mm.
But yeah, definitely they definitely have a presence here in Alberta and are definitely leading the way on a lot of fronts.
Right. Yeah, and so officially, I look forward to they have a bunch of different initiatives that we were able to talk about over the next um, X number of episodes, and so we'll look forward to sharing all those initiatives with you in time.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, Mike, let's stop wasting our time and learn how to manage it better. You, you said here that you're not very no, I said I'm not very good at it, which I think is true. I don't do a lot of time management. Most of my time management is just like trying to waste as little of it as possible. But do you have any kind of formal way of tracking your time or managing it?
From a tech perspective, the only time management tools that I really use are Google Calendar when it comes to just putting things in there and forgetting about it until I need to remember it again. And then Google Calendar pings me and says, "Hey, you got this thing coming up." I found that it's helped a lot to have the Google Calendar widget on my home screen on my phone. With Android, you can put what are called widgets. iOS has them as well, but they function slightly differently.
They're
They're
better
not
now than they used to be, I find.
okay. I haven't used them at all
Mhm.
on iOS. I'm aware of their existence and kind of what function they serve. They're almost like a more detailed and interactive notification
They can
versus
be, yeah.
a like
That's how they're styled, anyways.
yeah, on Android they become a part of the home screen UI and you can resize them, you can customize depending on the app, of course, you can customize what's inside of them and they can be very beneficial. They are very memory intensive though. I find that my phone, I mean it's a Note 4, so it's 4 years old now.
Yeah, at least 4 generations.
4 generations, I've probably closer to 5 years time-wise
Mhm.
at this point. Not since I've had it, but since it was new.
Yeah.
And so it is a little bit sluggish with the amount of stuff I have on my home screen, but I find that it's still usable the way it is. And the Google Calendar widget, it one of the options that they have for the widget is a agenda sort of view. So I'll have your at the top the most soon calendar item. So it'll say like if I have a, you know, pick them up from school, like they'll be in there as the next item. And then, oh, Tuesday you have whatever event, and it will just show the event itself.
Mhm.
And you can color code them. You can, set obviously with Google Calendar in general, you can set reminders, all that kind of stuff. But I find that having it on my home screen, that every time I unlock my phone is like right there. So I'm reminded by it. If I just set it in my calendar, then I set the reminder for a couple days before, I'll just forget about it up until that point. But at least when it's on my widget, then it shows up there, a week plus in advance, depending on how many
Yeah.
items I have set up there. So that's the main tool that I used for time management. On a daily kind of task basis, like a to-do list type thing, I don't really use anything.
Mhm.
I guess I haven't really found a need for it at this point. If anything, I'll use Google Keep just for kind of lists that I want to add to and then revisit at whatever point in time. But I wouldn't really consider that time management. That's more just life
Yeah, like
organization,
tasks.
kind of. But
Yeah.
it's not really time related,
Mhm.
so to speak. So, Rob, you use, I guess, Google Calendar and Outlook slash
Yeah.
OneNote
Yeah.
calendars. Why
You
don't you give us a bit of light on
yeah.
that type of workflow?
You you should really use OneNote because you're like, I would never manage my file system with OneNote. I would never use OneNote Calendar, but those are not features of OneNote. Um, I do
When did
use
I say I
Outlook.
wouldn't use OneNote calendar? I'm trying to pull out of the air
I
what
know.
the brand name of the calendar that you use with
I know.
OneNote.
There's no calendar in OneNote.
Okay. Well,
You
I'm
would
not
use
using that.
you would use Outlook. Outlook being the Microsoft product that has mail and calendars and contacts and all that. I do use that. That's at work. We use um, why can't I think of the name? Anyways, the enterprise Microsoft. I guess it's called Exchange. Exchange. Exchange is the word I'm thinking of. Microsoft Exchange server. So I can access all those emails and calendar stuff on my phone, and my tablet and don't have to kind of worry about it. I can add my Gmail account and my Outlook from work to that same app, so I can access it all in the same interface for calendars. And then Google Calendar for my kind of more personal stuff. And yeah, that's the basic things I use.
Yeah, I should mention that I do use Outlook as well for work.
Okay.
I guess I was thinking more personal life, but yeah, with work, like we have the Exchange server as well that we use for our email and the associated calendar that comes with it. And I think I've mentioned it before, but I find it very useful to do the flags on Outlook email, but they have reminders as well.
Yeah, I do.
So when you right click and go add reminder, you can set the flag for when you need it done by, like priority wise, but you can also have a reminder. So it pops up the same way like an event or a meeting reminder would pop up. But I like that. I've always wanted to remind myself to do something, but have like a email associated with that.
Right. Well,
Item?
like an email, like similar kind of metadata, like something that
Kind
pops
of.
up.
It's the
So
same
yeah.
way that inbox works with like snoozing emails, right? Like you like, I want to revisit this at whatever time, but I want to be able to see the email that it's related to.
Yeah.
And Outlook, before I'd just put a reminder saying follow up with blah 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 on blah 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 blah.
Yep.
But I won't be like, oh, okay, what was that about? Oh, I'll dig through my emails to go find that email. But with the add reminder feature on the flags for emails, you can just set a exact same type of reminder, like at what date, at what time, and it pops up the reminder with the little email in that box, and you just double click that, and the email pops open.
Yeah.
So if someone sends you email saying, "Oh, sorry, can't get this now. I'll follow up. I'll take a look at it in a week," you can add a reminder to say you just pop that up in a week.
Yeah.
And say, oh, yeah, I've got to follow up with that. And then say, hey, did you follow up with this thing that we needed, right? And I've used that so much with work since I discovered that feature.
Yeah.
That, and again, it's not really time management, but it definitely helps with organization and using the technology that you have to benefit you. Because I always think, well, how did our parents function before, right?
Yep.
My mom put notes all over the house. Now we don't have that because we have things we carry with us all the time that are essentially sticky notes. So same difference, I guess. Serves the same purpose, just a bit tidier, and you look less crazy doing it when people come over. But outside of that, I don't know how people. I guess people had like day planners and stuff.
Yeah, my mom was big on. Well,
yeah.
I think she still is, but big on writing everything down. Yeah. She'd have her big, thick book with like daily agendas and all kinds of room for notes and stuff.
Right. Yeah. So if you want to remind yourself in a week to do something, you flip to that page, say follow up with whoever. Right. So it's nice to have it all digital now.
Well, for me, it certainly is. I don't know if someone grew up with the kind of agenda thing. I don't know if digital would be a good enough replacement. Like I know people, you can now get ebooks, but a lot of people, I don't, but a lot of people still really like the feeling of flipping pages in a paper book.
Right. And Maria is that way quite a bit. Like I've shown her the Outlook thing about the add reminder. And then even with work, we'll have Excel spreadsheets where we track like receivables.
Right.
So it's like, this date we got this thing from this person. Oh, we're still missing this thing, right? So instead of having to keep it all in your head or a list, it's just all in a spreadsheet that you just mark off when you receive the thing. So especially when you have multiple people collaborating on something, it helps to have kind of a central tracking system to refer back to. And with her in her office, like she has a lot of receivables that she needs to keep track of as well. And I've kind of encourage her to set up some sort of tracking system, even just for herself, so that she's not going crazy trying to remember and follow up on all this stuff. Like it's just there. So like she opens it, looks at it to see what she needs, follows up as she needs, and you can just add whatever comments or notes to each cell, follow up with whoever on this day and still waiting for whatever. Like, I don't know. I think a lot of people, it's intimidating at first, but once you see how much better it makes your life, you don't go back.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm being dramatic about that. Like, I think it is literally once you see the benefit it offers, it's like, how did I ever function
Yeah. Oh
without
yeah.
this?
That's exactly how I feel about OneNote. You'll be disappointed to know, honestly. Like it sounded like you were describing OneNote the way I feel about it. It's one of those things that it took me a while. Like I'd heard about OneNote for years, and then I tried to go all in on it, and it was just like, oh, it's like having an agenda, like a day planner, like our parents would have, and then, or people probably still have, but then also being able to like add infinite sections and pages in to it, and it's all digital. And I don't know, it just keeps me much more organized than I would have been otherwise. The other thing, when you mentioned inbox, like Gmail, Google, do you use the reminders in Keep at all? Because Keep reminders also pop up in inbox, and I really like that. I make use of that.
Like I kind of alluded to before, I don't really use Keep for time sensitive stuff.
I don't either, but there are certain recurring or non-recurring reminders that I just like. I have a thing that pops up every day reminding me to do X and X thing at a certain time, and then it shows up. Like I never go and check it in Keep. I see it in inbox and I just swipe it away. And if I've done it or whatever, or if it reminds me to do it, and then it comes back up the next time in inbox. And so I kind of track it through there.
What would be an example of something that it reminds you to do, if you can share?
Like every Tuesday, whatever it is. Like I have different things, like a little chore or something to do, like take out the garbage every Tuesday.
So you have like a separate keep note for whatever day, like
Yeah.
Tuesday, you have a Tuesday keep note.
Yeah. Just because that's the most convenient way. It's something that I tried and then found it worked really well. And so I've kept it up.
So this would be an alternative to just setting it up in a calendar
Yeah.
as like a recurring
Because
event.
then it's not cluttering up my calendar.
Right.
Although I do think if I go into Google Calendar, I think it also shows it. If I have tasks on, which I do not right now. If I flip the switch on tasks, it does show up, yes.
Because there's tools built, like to-do apps that function that exact same way.
Yep.
Like every Tuesday at 8 a.m. remind me to take out the trash.
Yeah. That wouldn't be beneficial for me just as a reminder in a third, or I guess third party, but like a third app. But if it's built into something I'm already checking, then I find it useful. Like I'm not going to go and check a to-do app, but I'm going to look at my email and I'm going to see it pop up. Like you mentioned with Outlook, it's if you see it in your email, you're like, oh, there's a thing I have to do.
Right. I think the thing that I like about, from what I've heard about a lot of to-do apps, is they focus on making sure the task is done.
Right.
So if it pops up and you snooze it or swipe it away or whatever, it will remind you again in like an hour.
Yeah.
Right. Or however often that you just choose to have it bug you again.
Yeah.
Until you're like, oh yeah, I still have to do that. Oh yeah, I still have to do that. And then finally you do it and then mark it as done and then it doesn't bug you anymore. Because I find that I'll have something in my calendar or just whatever reminder is saying do whatever. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'll have to do that today. And then it just kind of like goes away. But it doesn't bug me again because the snoozing function, again, unless it's inbox where I can just keep snoozing an email.
Which you can.
But again, like at some point I'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll do that today and then just dismiss it.
Yeah.
But I think if the function was marked as like it is done, that thing is done, I probably wouldn't as easily just say, yeah, it's done.
Right.
I'd have it continue to bug me throughout the day so that it actually does get done.
Yeah.
But I guess it depends on the person, like who's using it and how they function.
Yeah. Even when it comes to things like, I used to use Instapaper a lot. And now I find that I'm not going to go to a thing like that. I'm never going to go and check my Instapaper list unless like I'm really bored and like Reddit has entirely been read. I'm all caught up on Twitter. Like all these things are up to date, which never happens anymore anyways. But if I use the Google Inbox, Gmail Inbox functionality where you can save a link to Inbox so it shows up as one of your emails, then I actually go and see it. So I use like again, for saving links and stuff, I use Inbox now just because it's built in. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've ever
I
used that feature.
I had tried using the link saving for
Mhm.
inbox, because I just, again, I use Pocket,
Right.
similar to what Instapaper
Yeah.
does, and at one point I can't remember why I did it. I think it's because I want to be reminded of it, and Pocket doesn't have reminders. It just
Mhm.
saves it. And you have to go and actually look at it.
Yeah.
At least as far as I know, they don't have reminders. So I was like, okay, I want to be reminded to read this. So I went and shared it to inbox, and then it made it as an email or whatever, I guess, just
Yeah.
an inbox item. And I guess it was good, because then it showed up at the top of my inbox, and I
Yeah.
remembered to go look at it. But I don't have too many use cases like that though.
Right.
Like too many times where I need that function. But no, that is a good feature of inbox to be able to
Yeah. Well,
send links
especially,
there.
yeah, they have with the widget, or I guess not widget, extension functionality is what I'm thinking of, where with Android you can definitely share to inbox. Like if you pop up on the share sheet on Android, it'll, one of the options you have is
No,
inbox.
that's
And
what
it'll
I
send
did
a link.
with the URL for that one site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so inbox on iOS does the same thing, where it'll pop up with an overlay that says you can either share via email, which is another thing you'd want to do with a link, or save to inbox. And so I never share anything. I would never share a link with anyone via email, because that's crazy. But I have definitely saved many links to inbox. It's
Right.
not like I don't do it even every week, but
Right.
whenever I have a link like that, I just save it.
Actually, the times, now that you're mentioning it, the times that I do want to save and be reminded of a link is with work stuff. Like a lot of the time on Twitter, I'll see whatever news item, or I'll see
Yeah.
something on LinkedIn or something that I want to look at for work, at work, when I'm at my computer. So instead of saving it to my personal reminder list of whatever, I'll just email it to myself,
Right.
the link, because I know that when I get into work on the Monday or that the next morning,
Mhm.
I'll go through my emails and be like, oh yeah, there's this thing I wanted to look at. And that's similar, I guess, to what Inbox does. Is
Oh yeah,
Inbox is essentially
definitely.
you're emailing it to yourself.
But without the overhead of actually sending an email.
Sure. And that's the main uh, hurdle with just emailing something to yourself. Is just sharing it to an email, or
Yeah,
just copy pasting
exactly.
an email. Like 3, 4 extra steps. Who wants to do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. One of the things that we haven't, that I haven't mentioned yet, and maybe you do the same, but um, when I'm at work and I have a meeting coming up, often the last thing I do before going to a meeting is I stand up, I go to the meeting, and then I think to myself, what room is this meeting in? And then I have to go sit back down at my desk, usually unlock my computer again, open my email, check. This is when I first started at work. This is what I would do. Like, go look in my Outlook, see where the meeting is, and then go to it. And then, like, because we have meeting rooms that are similarly named and numbered, I'll be like, oh, like if two are right beside each other on the 14th floor, there's 14150 and 14250. I'll often get the two confused number wise, because I'd often forget which is which anyways. And so I might have to like mentally recheck, but now I only use the Apple Watch to check that. And so I have the Siri watch face turned on, because I don't want to muck up my home screen with a calendar all the time. It's just when I'm going to a meeting. So I swipe over to the Siri screen, which is one screen over, and it always has my next meeting coming up. So I just glance at the screen and it shows what the meeting room is on my watch face. So I'm like, okay, 14250, I'm done. I keep walking. And then like halfway to the meeting, I'm like, oh yeah, what room was it again? 250, 150, 250? Oh yeah, 150. And then I just keep going. Like there's no more mental overhead. You're looking at me like I'm a crazy person, but that happens every single meeting.
I believe that's happened, but I don't see the necessity of going back to your desk. If it's on your watch, it should be on your
Oh, no,
phone.
no. That's what I'm saying. Before the watch, that's what I would have to do.
But
But
why wouldn't you just
now,
look at your phone?
because even then, at the time, there was no good widget. Like when I got the watch, there was no good way to actually go in and do it. So I'd have to, again, unlock my phone, go to my Outlook app, wait for it to load, go over to the
Are
calendar
you kidding me?
screen.
Wait for it to load. This is the struggle you're trying to overcome, is opening your
No, but it
phone and
takes a
waiting for
second
it
or
to load.
two to wait for it to load after you've unlocked it versus like lifting your arm.
Sure, but you went from go back to your desk, log
When
in,
I
check.
say
It's
go
like
back to your desk, I mean like I got to step away from it and I have to step back. It's like 5 or 10 seconds in either case to actually figure out what room you're in, and versus like looking at your watch. It's
sure. I can
infinitely
appreciate the
better.
convenience of the watch. I just don't think.
So okay, this is we have a lot of meeting rooms in our
Yep.
organization. We
Yep.
have our like NSERC spans several floors of our building, and there are meeting rooms on every floor. And so we're trying to get one that's not occupied, so we're not always in the same room. And this is a common problem that everybody on our floor faces. And so we often, like if there's a meeting with like 30 of us or 20 of us, we'll congregate in the elevator area trying to figure out what room the meeting is in, and nobody knows. So they either someone has to go back to
Again,
their
does
desk.
nobody have a phone?
Most people don't have their email hooked up to their phone. Like in our
But you do.
organization, I do.
So why wouldn't you be the
I
savior to go and let everyone
In the
know what
middle,
room
I
it's in?
used to, before I had the watch, but I did have the phone. That is what I would have to do, and it would still be. Trust me, it would take time to load my email and go over to the calendar, make sure like scroll to the right time, make sure like it didn't just pop up. Whereas
Mhm.
now on my watch face, it just pops up. It's just always there when I need it. So
Right.
like that's really my only use other than seeing the weather, the current weather. That's my only use for the Siri watch face, but it's
Right.
extremely useful every time I need it.
On that same note, unrelated to time management, but I've
Hmm.
really liked having the weather on my watch as well.
Yeah.
It's the best because I'll be going out for lunch. I'm like, and I'll be grab my jacket. Not that I do it any. It was different in the summer when I
Mhm.
could go with or without a jacket, but I still like to know how cold it is. So say if I'm should I get off on the +15 or should I go to the ground floor, depending on
Right.
how cold it is, right? So I'll just look at my watch and it's like, oh, it's -6. That's not bad. Oh, it's -15. Okay, this was a +15 walk today.
Yeah.
Because I think I've told you guys before, the thing that convinced me that I'd use a smartwatch is as I was heading out in the morning to work, I'd be wondering how cold it is outside, and I'd look at my
Right.
watch. Like, I'd never owned a smartwatch before, but it was just natural for me to go look at my watch to see
Yeah.
what the weather's like.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's not that it pays for itself that way, but
Sure.
it's that added convenience of having it right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
As long as it keeps updated, which
yeah,
sometimes I trust my watch has had the weather updated, but sometimes I
right,
don't. Like it's usually off by a degree or two, not 15 degrees.
right.
Like it's not months out of date. It's like 6 hours out of date or something.
Yeah, my weather app on the watch, it has settings for how often to refresh it.
Okay.
So I have mine to refresh every hour.
Mm.
But I think before it wasn't refreshing. I don't know if it was an issue with like the companion thing. Like Android has this really dumb setup where like if you want an app to continually refresh, it needs like a constantly running process, like
Huh.
almost like a second app
Really?
almost. Yeah, it's really weird. But Android likes to kill
Yeah. Yeah.
extraneous
Of course it does.
processes.
Yeah.
So I think Samsung had to do some sort of workaround because before my weather wasn't updating.
Mhm.
But then I noticed that every time a notification came in, my weather would also update.
Right.
So I think they coded in a thing that like whenever it gets a new notification, like update the weather if it's enabled
Right.
kind of thing. Because it's sending a notification anyway, so it may as well update the weather at the same time. And I
Mhm.
think that's kind of what it had it do because now it's always updated. But I also noticed that it like changes every single time a notification comes in. So it's
Right.
like because it's kind of a hacky workaround, but I guess it's fine. Like at least I get
Yeah.
my weather.
Yeah. It seems like people like you always talk about the raw power of a smartphone, but to me, it doesn't seem like it's that hard. One of the things that they talked about on, I think it was on Mac OS, recent in one of the recent updates the last few years, they talked about coalescing. Whenever the CPU is spun up, it would like almost like a. Have you ever heard of cron jobs? It's like
Sounds familiar.
it's a way of time, like setting a time for a process to run on your computer. And I almost thought you could like the weather app could say, oh, the next time we hit a certain interval of time, maybe every 15 minutes, the next time you hit that 15-minute barrier, check the weather up, like go get that information, update it in the app, update it in the widget, whatever, send to the watch, and then shut off the CPU. And like any app could request if such and such an interval is hit and it doesn't
Mm.
have updated information, go fetch new information. And it seems like that would be such a great way to have things updated, but it doesn't seem to me like my thought would be, oh, Apple or Android or whoever has thought of things like that, but it doesn't seem like they have. It doesn't seem like any app can just go get updates because I don't need my weather to update on my phone every minute. The weather's not going to change that fast. But if it updated every 15 minutes and had that date, like if it showed me 15-minute old data whenever I opened the phone, like it would just pop up with 15-minute old data and then refresh and then pop over, like refresh to new. That seems way better to me than opening the weather app completely fresh every single time, blank for 5 seconds, and then load in the data. And it doesn't seem like it'd be that hard to code to just have, instead of saying, oh, either refresh when it's open or when I hit refresh, or never get new data. It seems like you could have it ping on intervals.
Would the idea be that the operating system is pushing this data every however often?
No, not because like one of the things that iOS started working on, I think, I forget if Android has the same thing, but there's background app refresh that
Sure.
apps can
Yeah.
request
Yep.
information in the background.
Yeah. There's background data. Yeah.
And it seems like you don't need live data coming in. Like you have push notifications come in, obviously, but you don't need the app to have live refresh data 24/7 or even every minute or even every 5 minutes.
Right.
But if you had a certain interval, it doesn't seem like having the CPUs spin up, so to speak, for 5 or 10 seconds every 15 minutes or even every 10 minutes would be that hard on the battery. And it would mean that you could get all of the background data, all the background app data out of the way and live in one go, as opposed to having to load like your phone knows what apps you use most frequently, and it knows approximately when you use them and what kind of data you need. It seems like it wouldn't be that hard compared to all the really advanced stuff they're doing now. It wouldn't be that hard to have it go get background data smartly and just keep a copy of it in cache in the app. Maybe I'm underthinking this, but it seems like
Right.
it wouldn't be that difficult.
I think given the advancements that processors are trying to make related to power management, I think power management in general is a lot more complex than we can imagine.
Yeah. I'm sure it is.
Right. Like it probably uses a lot more power than you'd think. And I feel that because you're saying macOS already does this. Yeah. I feel that if they already do it, then like it's not this super secret technique.
Right.
That if they're not, then they may already be doing that, what you're describing. But if they're not, there's probably a reason for it. Because others, like if macOS is already doing it, like why wouldn't they put it in everything else?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, they talked on ATP last week about processors and people saying like, oh well, like the new iPhone has this super powerful processor. Why not just put that same processor in the new MacBook? It's like, well, it doesn't
Right.
work like that. Like you can't just swap one in for the others. They're designed differently. Like thermal requirements, all this kind of stuff. You have to consider that. So you can't just draw direct parallels between the two
Right.
cases, right? So this may be the same thing, or like I said, they may already be doing that, and it still has the challenges that we're seeing today, as far as getting new data in the background.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to post, I just found one link here from Ars Technica talking about timer coalescing, along with, it was in 2013. So Mavericks was a version of OS 10 at the time that was using it, but it talks about timer coalescing and how it could, how it does save power and how it makes sense to line up processes instead of having like, oh, this process needs power right now, use it. This needs
Right.
timer now. To say like on every X interval, all the processes can just go and use power then while the CPU is running while it's running hot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that part makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's why I think like if it did make sense for phones to do that, they could be or should be already doing that.
Right.
But
And to a certain extent, they kind of do, because if I go over to my widgets in the notification center on iOS, they do kind of all go. That is kind of a way for them to all go get data all at once. But it's not in the background. Like it seems like if you have something as a widget, like if I have my calendar widget, that should be automatically fetched. Maybe that's a bad example because your calendar events are already kind of static. But if I have my transit, let's say, my nearby transit buses with the times, like if even 5 minutes, if it just went and got the latest bus times, that would seem like it's not a waste of power, because either the phone's off and it's like the screen's off. The screen is going to be one of the things that takes up the most amount of power. And so if you're already, for example, calling to cell towers or calling to the Wi-Fi network, sneaking some transit data, like sneaking a transit data request and getting data back from the transit app, seems like it wouldn't take up that much extra power. And
Right.
it is something that the user would benefit from having.
Well, and it comes back to what I was saying about my weather app. Like it almost seems like it's kind of doing that already, where I get a notification and it also updates the weather at the same time, because the phone's done the work of getting that data from the servers, and then it's just sending it to the phone. So if it's already sending data, it's already waking the screen or vibrating, whatever, it may as well send that extra little packet to update the weather app, right? So it does sound like some of these processes.
It does sound like that's what they're doing,
right? But on like an operating system level where all the apps kind of follow whatever rule, like this example is kind of an exception, I think, because it's a Samsung watch with a Samsung phone in the Samsung weather app.
Exactly.
So they can kind of get away with just doing that.
Yep.
Whereas if it's like, use the example of transit, there's no, at least again, as far as I know, there's none of the central timing thing that they can just jump onto and say, yeah, at this interval, we want to get updated.
Agreed.
But I agree that if they're not already doing that sort of thing, it's worth trying at least to see what it does.
And to be fair to these third-party apps, especially, it is like, I appreciate that it's a difficult problem, and they have gotten way better since widgets were a thing in the notification center. Like it used to be that I would look at, for example, transit, because it's a good example of something that gets live data very often. I would have to open the widget, wait for it to load, like sit there, like wondering to myself, does this have live data, or is it like a cache that hasn't cleared yet? Trying to figure out. And by the time that it had actually loaded and I was confident that it had new data, I may as well have just gone into the app. And a lot of the times I would just go into the app just to make sure. But now it's been a few years of this and they've been getting better and better and better. I now will just go in to the notification center and like I don't even have to open transit anymore. I just see the transit data and it's clearly like the UI is flashing at me. It's flashing the live symbol. So I know, or at least I'm a lot more confident that that's the live data. And that's something that not a lot of apps, in my experience, have going for them, where they have something that's actually like, it's actually pulsing to indicate that it's live data. Whereas if it's not live, it hasn't updated yet, it's not going to have that pulsing yet. And the other apps haven't done anything like that to what I've seen. The apps that I have, at least. Maybe there is someone else that's doing it, but I don't know.
So is it as long as that widget is active, it's always fetching live data?
Yes. Well, it's fetching it on an interval. I think it's every 60 seconds or so. I think you might be able to, after like between 30 and 60 seconds, it will allow you to pull for new data, but otherwise it refreshes every 60 seconds automatically when you
All the
have it open.
time, or
When you have it open.
Oh,
When you
okay.
have the widget visible or you're in the app.
Oh, okay, not in the background.
Right.
Because I was gonna say that'd be pretty resource intensive if it's
Yeah.
like 24/7, even when you don't need the bus.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that is one of the things, like transit app we've talked about in the past. The nice thing is that it does show you where the buses are on the map, and it shows you how long ago where that data came from and when it was gotten.
Right.
Yeah. We kind of got off topic of time management.
Yeah,
This is the problem.
This is literally what my problem is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we talked about the high level planning calendar stuff. I'm interested in the task management. Like
Okay.
when you're doing a task, how do you, if at all, stay on task? Because for me, like with work, we have like hard, well, I guess you call them hard deadlines and like soft deadlines.
Mhm.
It's like we have long-term projects that you kind of do when you're able to, that there's no real due date, and the scope and requirements of the project are always changing,
Mhm.
kind of, versus just regular tasks.
Yeah, like stuff that's on an interval and like
Just
every week or whatever you need to run that
kind of,
report or something.
right,
Yeah.
exactly, right? And that takes like a predictable amount of time and has the same kind of stuff that it needs. So it's easier to kind of get an idea for how long something should take. And as I'm doing it, if it's taking faster or longer than it should.
Yeah.
So for that kind of stuff, I don't really need it. Like these are all on the scale of like 1 to 2 hours, like
Right.
each of these little tasks. Whereas the long term stuff, it's like it's on the timeline of like months that
Yeah.
this stuff is trying to get done in, right?
Mhm.
But even then, it's like, coming back to the coding part, like the coding project, it's like stuff comes up and you've got to work on it a bit longer, work on this part instead of this part, right? So you can't really, and it's just me working on this. It's not like we have a bunch of people working on different sections of the
Mhm.
stuff. So you can't even be like run into a problem and send that over to Dave and be like, oh, hey, this is your,
Yeah.
I found an issue with your code. Like, can you fix that? Right.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing is kind of tricky. And I don't know if there's really, I mean, like, aside from just saying like, okay, by this point, and it comes back to that hard deadline thing. It's like, hey, by this point, I need this much done, regardless of what else comes up. So it's like you just work longer hours to get that done. If like for when other stuff does come up, because it
Mhm.
will. It's not really like, but it's hard because when you're doing that thing, you're not like, unless you're just always working 110%, just head down, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, because it's like, oh, I'll do this thing that shouldn't take too long, and you're kind of doing it. It's like, oh, I ran into this thing, and you can do that. Oh, I ran into this thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to foresee how much longer it could take than you expect. And I don't know if there's an easy solution to applying some sort of like time management technique to that.
Right. Yeah. I mostly just go with whatever, like I just do tasks linearly. I don't have any real system for kind of saying, "Oh, I've now spent half an hour on this task for this day. Like I'll get back to it next time." I just kind of, if there's a project that's longer term and I'm interested in it, like especially coding projects where I'm like, I'm eager to do this and I want to like solve it because it's an interesting problem. And I know most of my other work is, like you mentioned, oh, running this report or doing this fixed time task that needs to get done. But you're not, first of all, I'm not learning anything. I'm not gaining any new experience. I'm just doing the same thing that I did before with new data. Like maybe our CPUs are just bored and that's why they don't fetch new data. I don't really find that I need task management system for that. And so all I really have that I've actually used is keeping a consistent, like a logical place where I have like either like it's not really a to-do list, like a list of tasks that you have to do, but it's like if I'm running such and such a report, these are the steps I follow. It's like when you hear pilots or surgeons have a checklist, like a pre-flight checklist or a pre-op checklist, it's almost like that where I'm just making sure that I've done my due diligence to do every step properly. And you're going to hate me, but OneNote is really great for that because you can just have like a pre-filled list of here's the thing I have to do. Oh yeah, there's a link to that resource or this form or this template or whatever it is. And so I can just open that up. And a lot of the things that we do at NSERC are yearly. So they're not, the task isn't actually going to be exactly the same because there will have, since the previous year, there will have been small tweaks or improvements or whatever. So you're going back to last year's template, making whatever tweaks were needed in the interim in the year that has passed, and then doing the task. And then it's kind of like off your plate again until next year. So trying to come up with a system to handle that is like a challenge in itself. Like you could have a few people on our team whose job is just to update procedures.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of a weird, tricky situation, but I'm sure that like, especially in public service, I think there's probably a lot of things like that where they only get looked at every so often, every year, every few years.
Right.
And usually in our case, at least, and I think probably in a lot of government jobs, either it's someone who's been doing it for 30 years and is bored, but they like that's their jobs, they do it. Or in our case, a lot more often, it's someone who's never done it before. Like the person who did it last is not even there anymore. And it's someone who's never done it before trying to figure out what they're supposed to do and what's changed. And in either case, it's not the kind of thing that's really amenable to a good kind of repetitive system like that.
Right. And it sounds like on its own, having it being done every year versus regularly, you need those types of checklists and ideas of how long it should take, how to do it, etc.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, with people who haven't done it before, again, it's even someone who does it regularly, who does it every year, they'll still probably have to refresh themselves and whatever, right? But for someone who's never done it before, that resource needs to be there to be able to do that, especially if the person who did it last time, it may not even be there anymore.
Yeah. The funny thing you get with that also, the other consequence of that is that there will be someone who's either done it multiple times before. Like there's a person who needs something and there's a person who has to do it. And so the person who needs the thing, like the report or whatever it is, whatever needs to be run or done or worked on, they know that it has to get done, but the person that actually has to do it is new and they have no idea that it needs to be done. So like they'll be going on with their regular work, pulling the report, doing the thing, making copies, doing whatever they needed. And then all of a sudden they'll get an email from someone and they're like, "Oh, did you do the report like you're supposed to?" And they're like, "What report? I have no idea what you're talking about." And it's like, "Oh, every year at this time, the person with this job does this thing." And it's like, how can there not be like it's like public service government is obviously bureaucratic. It's very complicated. There's lots of stuff going on. There's lots of moving pieces. But I find it so funny that you could get surprised by a task just because nobody who's there knew that it was coming. You'll get an email and you're like, suddenly you have to spring to action and everyone has to unite and like pull this together, where it's like, in theory, you could have been preparing for like a month.
So are there no supervisors that guide their groups to make sure that kind of stuff is done?
There are, and it's not like those supervisors are bad. Like it's not a bad. No. It's not a bad mark on them because it often bypasses them. Sometimes it doesn't, and in those cases you'll have kind of a warning, but the task will often bypass a manager and it will just go straight to the person underneath, the person that actually has to do the thing. So maybe that's a kind of improper chain of command and that's how it gets missed. But if say there's a veteran person doing the task and there's a veteran person assigning the task, the manager doesn't need to be involved. So the emails and whatever, the materials can just go straight back and forth between the two people. But then a new person comes in underneath the manager and they get surprised and the manager, like if they went and talked to the manager and said, oh, there's this such and such a thing, they'll have no idea what you're talking about because they were never involved in it.
Right. But so it's the individual not being surprised, not the group, is what you're saying. So the manager, supervisor could have been handling it or whatever anyway.
You could probably find someone else in the team, like in the broader team, that had heard of it and like maybe knew it was coming or whatever. Like I know that because I did it a few times when I was in a corporate planning job, I had a report that I had to produce. Like it was a lot of work and I had to do it over several months, but there were still tasks that would come in that were like, oh, we have to do this. And then somebody inevitably would be like, oh yeah, I remember having to do that at one point, but it's like, it's not their job anymore. So it doesn't come up. And like, so I know now because I was there for a year, I know now every step of that process, but I'm not there anymore. And there was never any opportunity for me to be like, oh yeah, by the way, this comes up at this time, because I was just gone. And then they brought someone else in. There was no overlap. There was no kind of passing on of knowledge.
Right. Yeah. Knowledge transfer, knowledge loss is, especially in the current economy in Alberta here, is a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like companies, especially big ones, when they have to do like layoffs and stuff, they'll say, well, this young person, they're cheaper, they're more eager, they are better with technology, so let's keep that person in. Can the guy who's making twice as much and knows the same and possibly less than this other guy, right?
Yeah.
Knows in air quotes.
Yeah.
Because you can
know.
only, yeah. So no, I mean, as in they probably know more than they're given credit for, from like process, how things work, just confidence, etc. Right?
Yeah.
Versus like technical knowledge, right? Yeah. So then they're not there anymore, and then it's the same kind of scenario. It's like, oh, where's this thing? Oh, I've never done that before. Oh, who did it? Oh, Julia. Oh, she got let go last year. Like, oh, who knows how to do this now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or just general day-to-day situations of like stuff happening, and that experience is lost. Like people who have been through that thing before, especially like in oil and gas, when like a lot of different things can come up and happen. Like I've been exposed to a lot of different types of situations that like the person who's working with me now in my group, she won't know what to do. And so I say like, oh yeah, when stuff like this happens, this is what you do, blah, 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 blah. And then like, and I know that because I was in her place where it's like, I don't know what to do with it. Right. And my manager was the one that showed me how to do it because he had been around the block and has encountered it before. Right. So it's that passing down of knowledge and experience. But like, if you're not careful, you can put yourself into a corner when you don't encourage that type of training when those people are there, and or that transfer of the knowledge. And again, like you're not going to cover all your bases with someone. If you have to lay someone off and you ask if they can stick around and train the people that are going to replace them, like I don't know if that's even a thing, but I mean, like hopefully you've covered that beforehand so that like the new, potentially younger people are getting that transfer of knowledge while those people are still there. Not to condone or encourage that type of laying off. Like ideally you're not laying someone off but just because they're the oldest or have the most experience, but often that is the case, and hopefully you've prepared for that.
On our team, we were lamenting / observing that we had one person out of the 6 of us that had been in the same job at this time last year, and so most of us had been there for a year or more, but we weren't doing the same job. And like, so we'll come up with, after like spending a month or something, 6 weeks of effective time, and we'll like learn a fact, like learn something about what we're working on. Be like, oh, I had no idea that was the way that was supposed to be. And then like a month or 2 later, I'll go back to the person that like, I'll see the person in the hall that had my job previously, and I'm like, hey, did you know that such and such a thing is the way it is? And they're like, yeah, of course, obviously. Like we spent like not continuously, but like over 6 weeks we learned that. It's like
Right.
you already knew it and you were gone, but you were right over there.
Right.
But you didn't know that you didn't know it. You didn't know to ask.
Right. And that's why, as a part of when I train people and when I am being trained myself, I find it pretty beneficial just to like watch someone do something.
Mhm.
Like, even if it's the same thing you're doing, everyone has their own way of doing stuff.
Right.
And you might be like, wait, what did you just do there? Like, what did you click?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was an option, right? Like, and that's happened to me and by me on so many occasions. And it shows that, yeah, there's more than one way of doing things, and there's not just one right way. There might be more efficient ways for certain people, but what you're doing right now may not be the most efficient way to do it. But unless, like you said, you see someone else doing it differently or doing it, period, you'll have no idea that's even a thing. Especially when it comes to technology and like software. Like people like Microsoft Word and Excel, like those pieces of software change all the time. So if you started in like Excel 97 and it's been updated up to whatever point, but you've just kept using the same methods and whatever that you've always done, but they've added new things in the meantime, and someone else has come in and stepped into it at 2010, they may have completely different ways of doing things, different functions, different whatever, but you'll have no idea, even though you're using the exact same software, like on the same version even, but you just had no idea that it could do that thing. So yeah, that's one of the fun things and downfalls of technology, I guess, is that it is changing so often and getting better, but you need to be intentional about finding what's changed and how to do these different things.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons that I keep advocating at work it's like, it's almost like the analogy of like you learn how to ride a bike and then you know how to ride a bike, but except the bike keeps getting more advanced. And if you keep, like if every time a new bike gets released, you learn how to ride that bike, it takes no extra effort. But if there's bikes in the meantime that you don't ever learn to ride because you're riding your original bike all the time, if suddenly like a new advanced bike gets released that's like 5 generations ahead and someone says, oh, now you have to, we're discontinuing that old bike, you have to learn the newest one. You didn't have those interim steps.
Right.
And it's just completely overwhelming. But if you had just stayed on the newest one all the time, or like after 3 months or something of the newest one being out, that you jump to it, then the transition from old to new is a lot more gradual.
Right. I think to continue on the bike analogy.
It's an awful analogy, but
okay. Well, you started it, so we'll continue it.
I know.
It's like if someone converted your chain bike to like an internal gear shift bike and threw on like 10 extra speeds and didn't tell you, but they put that new gear shifter like on the frame somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Out of sight, out of your line of sight.
Yeah.
And then someone like rips past it, like, why are you going so slow?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? It's like, oh, didn't you know that you can go way faster? Look, there's a little lever down here to change your gears. Like, oh my God, like I didn't realize it did this, right?
Yeah.
I think both cases are true. Like your thing about, you stay with an old thing until you're forced to, or in a position where you're needing to use the new thing and you're behind, or they change just the thing you've always been using, adding new features that you're not even aware of because you haven't been shown them.
Sure. Yeah, I especially find I know myself because I have this one macro that I'm super proud of that it's agnostic to my work specifically. All it does is blindly sort files into kind of piles or into folders based on what they're called.
Sure.
And all you need to have is one spreadsheet that has a map of what goes where, and it will change it on the file system. And So I know if I get a task that involves having to move files from one place to another, I know that even if my macro doesn't apply directly for solving that problem, I know that I can use that as a tool with small tweaks, or like I know I can apply that document, that macro, to almost any problem to do with sorting files on a file system. But if someone else was given the same task but just had my macro as it is, like it's not you they wouldn't be able to just use it. They wouldn't be able to intuit that it would work in this other way. Whereas because I know the underpinnings of how it works, I can just go, oh yeah, just like change that column to this, and instead of doing this, hitting this button, just put those values in this column. And like I can run it and it'll do exactly what I need. But someone else coming to it will be like, oh no, that macro doesn't work for that. You have to just do this. And then like that'll take, honestly, like it could take, because it's a manual job. Otherwise, it could honestly save you like 1,000 times effort. Like it
Right.
could be 3 orders of magnitude faster to do it using the macro adapted. But if you don't know about it, then you have to do it the manual way. There's no shortcut other than adapting something
Right.
that you don't really know about.
Well, and you guys don't have, outside of yourself, I guess, like an in-house app developer
No.
to build
Yeah.
custom apps that does that thing that your macro does, but that everyone can use and is user friendly and flexible in a very intuitive way.
Yeah.
Versus a
Yeah.
spreadsheet that has a macro that you have to do a bunch of crap to make it work.
I'm on a 5-year plan to get that job. But right now it doesn't exist.
Well on your way. You just need to learn Java. I don't know what apps are written these days.
I hope not Java. I hope
Something.
not Flash.
Probably Java, Flash, or I don't know if C. I don't think you would run like UI apps in C, can you?
Yeah, you could.
Okay.
Not only C, but like that's what Windows is mostly written in, like C++.
Okay.
Yeah. This does tie into time management and task management, because like that old XKCD that is always applicable. When you're automating the thing, like the time it takes to automate, like I'd rather spend 99% of my time automating a thing and then 1% running it than having to just run it manually constantly.
Well, for me, it's not even the direct or immediate time savings from that initial instance. Like, so you spend 80% of the time building the automation, 20% running it, whatever, or whatever the percentage may be. But then I find that as like an investment, because I'm investing in the time to learn how to automate this thing, you know, whether it's writing code or running whatever software. But then the next time I want to try to build something to automate, it's not going to take that same 80%. It's going to be like 5% or whatever. Like you said, to adapt the spreadsheet you've already made.
Yeah.
Right. So the more that you're able to use it, the more payoff you get.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have to start from scratch every time. Ideally, you're able to reuse your code, or just at least you'll have that like foundational knowledge and understanding of how to do something that you had put in that first time. That, you know, if you look at that snapshot, it's like, well, why'd you even bother doing that? You didn't save any time. It's like, yeah, but this next time I saved a ton of time because I already had that thing.
Yeah. Totally agree.
So now, like, it's we talked about last episode how you're like the Excel guy, right? Like, I'm the Excel guy at my office, right? Like, I've been working with this project that before, and even just other random like Excel stuff. They'll like send to me, hey, can you like do whatever? I'm like, oh yeah, that shouldn't take long, and they'll just go do it and whatever. It's like, I guess there's that value of playing with that kind of stuff, because now I've discovered all these different ways to use Excel and coding and macros and formulas and whatever. That if I hadn't done that, I'd have no idea that that was even a thing until I actually made a point to do it.
Yeah.
So, and part of it is part of that knowledge loss thing, because once I'm gone, like literally no one is going to be able to do anything with that kind of stuff. So like if I'm the employer, you're trying to like have that person stay. I mean, like, it's not practical to try to have everyone or even a second person on the team know how to do that thing.
Yep.
It's just not realistic, because not saying this about myself, but like not everyone can do what that person can
No,
do,
of course.
right? So like let alone someone on the team already, right?
Mhm.
Hopefully you're lucky and you can, and a couple people can be able to do it, but more often than not, you're not going to have that case. So it's a bit of a play to manage those vulnerabilities, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny because when I wrote that first macro, like I've done several now, but when I first wrote it, I was a program assistant, and I've now moved up to program officer, which program assistants report to. So the program assistants will sometimes, well, they'll still come to me sometimes, but sometimes I'll just hear that like, oh, there was an issue with the macro, and they just don't really know what to do. Like some of them will find workarounds. Like the ones that are more familiar will find workarounds or like make it work. But the macros that I was adapting came from somebody else who is completely gone. And they were all just like, it works. We don't need any, we don't know any better. So we're going to keep using this. I came in and made it a lot better, but now I'm still there, but I'm one level removed. And already I can see that there's no new development on these things where theoretically, like they're not in their perfect form yet. They're just better than they were. I know they could keep getting better. And if I had that job where you have kind of more free time because most of your time is spent on repetitive tasks that I've been automating,
right?
I would have time to keep developing it, to keep making it more broad and more applicable and develop new tools. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's like with the project we're on now, whenever I see an opportunity to make the thing more user friendly, like even if it's throw in like an error message, right? Like an explanation, not just, oh, the thing didn't run, but it's like, oh, do this, this, and this, or like put in safeguards against things breaking. Like, because I know being familiar with apps and tech and like how easily things can break, especially how like people use stuff, it's like, it will have cases where it's not going to work. And I want to make sure that the person who's using it knows why it's not working and how to do it properly. Or to not even get to that point in the first place where it doesn't work. But even if they do, right? And it's like, there's people that might say like, oh, well, don't waste your time on that. Just get it working. It's like, okay, it's fine if it works, if you use it properly. But like, there's reasons for putting in these safeguards and these things, right?
Yeah. With that one macro, like I built a whole, like it literally is an app. It has like there's a check, like there once you've completed all the steps necessary up until running it, there's a button you hit that I make you hit. It will not run unless you hit this button, and it'll go and check everything you've done, make sure it will all work, and then it'll report back, okay, now you can go, and it'll actually give you a green go symbol, and then you can run it. But otherwise it will not let you.
Right.
But that was a whole framework around it.
Data validation is a good thing. The other thing that I do is, because a lot of these macros are buttons, I have a initial sub where it says, are you sure you want to do this? Yes or no. And then the thing will run once you press yes, because the way that the worksheet was before was it would just run the thing once it was clicked. It's like, and I've clicked buttons like accidentally so many times. And there's no way to undo a macro.
No.
Right. So it's
you
like,
can stop it, but
well,
kind of
not on the order of like milliseconds when it runs.
No. If it's done already by the time you realize it started, then
these are like clear data buttons, right? It's like you want to make sure you actually want to clear the data when you press it.
And there's no undoing a macro.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like once you do it, it's like, oh crap, that's gone now. Like hopefully you can close the thing and then like not save it.
Exactly.
And you saved it beforehand, right? But so that's one of those safeguards, is like making sure there's confirmation dialogue every time there's like a destructive, even like constructive action. Like you want to make sure that they intentionally did that. And like, I think for the effort of an extra button click is worth having that extra thing in there.
Yeah. I also I only clear redundant data. I make sure my macros never clear data that might be needed. That's hard to do. Like it means you almost never clear stuff. But like I'll only delete a row or delete something if it's like if it had been a count, like if it was a log of what had happened, or if it was like there's a duplicate row functionality, but it keeps when I'm duplicating it, it keeps a copy like there's already a copy of the information above it. So if I'm deleting a row, it's only going to delete the row that was duplicated. It's never going to delete the initial row, because
So
that would just be, it's too easy to mess up.
But you don't have forms that people fill out that you have macros to just clear the form to reset it.
Well, I haven't done a form one yet. No.
Okay. Yeah,
But
like
that
a
would be
lot
a
of
tricky one. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the stuff that we have are like form based, where you're putting data into various cells that are used in other parts of the sheets. And like from one job to the next, you want to have that data cleared because it's not needed anymore. So then I have macros that go and clear that data, but it's always like, are you sure you want to clear all the user enter data from the sheet? Yes. Okay. Well, forever hold your peace.
So I feel like that's good for the week. We didn't get to online reviews, but that's okay because we managed our time well.
I think we did.
There's too many easy puns on that.
Is that a pun? I don't think that's a pun. I think that's just
an ironic situation.
It's not even ironic. We've been over what irony is.
At the beginning of the episode, you called it ironic. Now I don't get to call it ironic. That's fine.
No, because what I said was actually ironic.
Situationally, mine is ironic still. So in that case, I'm going to stop the broadcast and then we'll figure it out.